Hello, welcome to video number 2 in this series. I didn't really plan on putting out a video tonight, but I thought I would say a few words just to test out the microphone. I went out to buy a new little microphone today because my old laptop, I should say, didn't really have a very good one, and I was a little concerned. And as I was buying this microphone today, I started thinking to myself about the importance of words and the importance of sound, and kind of how sound and words have been so influential in my life, but also a major issue as well. When I was born back in North Wales, I was born with a disorder called dyspraxia, which for most people it affects the ability to control their fine or their gross motor skills. So the majority of people who suffer from this or live with this, they'll be a little bit clumsy, they might not be coordinated, and a lot of people actually have it and probably aren't diagnosed with it. For me, it was controlling the muscles in my mouth, which proved to be quite difficult. And as a result of this, I couldn't speak when I was a child. When I was around 2-3 years old, when most others are starting to develop language skills, I understood language, but I couldn't communicate it. I would all like blah 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 blah. I would be babbling basically. So when they finally diagnosed me with this and they understood what was happening, they put me into a special speech therapist program, and I worked with a woman named Mrs. Humphreys at school, and it was days after day after day of learning how to use the muscles in my mouth to say words in order to put words out there. And they actually taught me a special sign language that I could use. I only remember a little bit of it, but it was a way for me to communicate, because I understood English, but I couldn't communicate it. This is actually one reason why I speak the way I do now, because as a result of it, and it's a laziness thing on my part, but as a result of it, I have a slight lisp, and my worst is my THs. Instead of saying th, I say th. So when I say through, it sounds just completely strange and very strange and weird. So when I was looking, and I posted that video last night, and when I was reviewing it today, I noticed how my speech isn't as eloquent as I hear it. And of course, we all hear ourselves differently because of the mechanics of the inner ear. But even with how many words that I put in and say that are completely redundant, like and and all of those, and I came to realize, and I've known this about myself for a very long time, that my most eloquent way of communicating is through the communication of writing. So I can write page after page after page, and I often do, but when it comes to speaking, I often am quite hesitant to. I don't necessarily respond to people's questions at full length like I would if I was writing. And that is something I've been working on a lot. I've been working on my ability to use language like I used to. And language is very much a muscle. It starts to atrophy if you don't use it. And for many years when I was in university, I was using very flowery language. When I was in high school, I would use very flowery language. And that was really beaten down because the majority of people didn't use that sort of language. So when I went into university, and the majority of my work was through writing, but also with the counseling aspect, it was speaking and asking questions. It wasn't stream of consciousness talking. When I left university, my eloquence started to disappear, and I started to use very lazy expressions like and all of those. But as I bought this microphone and I started thinking about some of the experiences I've had in my life around language, I also started to think about what we put out there in general. This idea that language is an energy and we can control what comes out this gateway. And for me, I try to be thoughtful about my words, but lately and over the past few years, I've noticed that I'm not. That it's that I sometimes just talk just to be heard. And that goes back to some deeper issues in my past, but one of my understandings about myself is that generally in my family, for example, I'm not heard. My passions and my loves and my interests are not the interests and passions of my family, and so trying to speak about those generally is like trying to speak to a brick wall, and that's part of the course of coming up in a family, right? Over the past few years, I've met many people who share my interests, and it's been such a godsend to do that, to meet those people and to have those conversations. But just in general life, I keep thinking to myself about some of the words that I use on a regular basis, like all my swear words, and I used to never swear, ever. And now especially when I'm around a group of people who also swear, I'm constantly swearing as well. And I'm both comfortable and uncomfortable with that. I think it just underlines for me some of the work that I'm still doing around being very intentional with my language, being very intentional with the words that I choose, what I choose to say and what I don't choose to say. And I think also regaining a sense of comfortableness with silence. I used to be very comfortable with silence. I used to be very comfortable being silent. And over the past, since university, or so 5 years ago, it's definitely shifted. I feel not uncomfortable around other people's silence. I definitely feel uncomfortable with my own silence, and I find even when I'm by myself, if my cat's here, I'll talk to the cat just to talk, and I think that comes back to that question of being heard. A few weeks ago, I was chatting online with a teacher in the spiritual group that I am part of, around being heard, and around so for example, the woman was talking about how when she was a child and when she was younger, she wasn't heard. Her ideas were not heard, and so when she's interrupted now, if she's talking and somebody else interrupts her, that triggers something for her, and it triggers a lot for me as well. Nobody likes to be interrupted because after all, it shows that the other person isn't listening. And I think for me, that's something that I've been dealing with a lot in my family situation, is not being listened to, not being respected. With this other group and my larger group of friends, there are a lot of people who I listen to, and who never interrupt me. But when I am interrupted, that becomes a signal to me that, again, what I'm thinking, what I'm saying is not important. And then, of course, I have to ask myself, is what I'm saying right now intentional? And is what I'm saying right now something that has to be said? The other person doesn't have to listen. It's more of I'm putting it out there, and if they don't want to receive, they don't want to listen, or they don't listen, then that's their path, right? That's their business. But for me, it's important that when I do put something out there, that it's received or listened or at least respected. But again, it comes back to that question to me of intentionality. And so, generally speaking, you know, I feel like this project of YouTube and doing videos will be quite beneficial because it's practice, and it makes me start to wonder about what is necessary for me to say and what isn't necessary for me to say. So anyways, from something as simple as buying a microphone came a whole video, which is quite fun. So thank you for watching, if you are watching, and I just want to say thank you to those who commented and spoke to me about the other video that I posted. It's quite encouraging to see that people are actually interested in what I have to say, and I hope that I can turn this channel into something that would not only help me, but also possibly help other people. Thank you for watching, and have a wonderful night.